a couple of people with sort of those traditional like wheelchair or other kind of visible disabilities, but then all of the rest of them were mental health challenges, right? Whether like diagnosed, on support, or not.
Yeah.
So that's really been a kind of glimpse under the hood. And then that started in sort of 2018, 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020, right? So this, mental health, the real, one of the really sort of societal level health problems is that. So
life is an endless stream of challenges, but no worries. Manuj is bringing the world's best minds right here for you.
My gosh, Manuj, you just blew my mind.
Thank you, universe. Manuj, thank you.
I'm so grateful.
It makes me feel a bit better.
Thank you.
Bootstrapping your dreams is here to give you what you need to succeed.
Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking to Dugan Selkirk. So Dugan has a lot of background in entrepreneurship, startups, and currently he's working with a very unique organization called Community Futures, which is located here in British Columbia. And Dugan will ask him to explain a little bit more about it. But basically, this organization is helping a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startup founders, providing loans and various kind of services to promote entrepreneurship. So Dugan, welcome to this podcast. I'm so excited to be here. We've had really good conversations prior to this, so I'm looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, thanks, Manuj. I'm excited to be here too. I know when we first met, I was like, okay, this is an interesting guy. I want to get to know him. So glad to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we go any further, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, what kind of work do you do, and a few of your accomplishments, which there are many of them.
Oh boy, probably we want the shorter version of the story, I guess. Yeah, like why don't we start at the present here? So yeah, as you mentioned, I work with Community Futures, which is a very interesting organization. They are a kind of decentralized business development and financing group. So mainly, historically, they've been a rural-facing organization, and they do developmental lending into rural communities. Recently, they were awarded a contract for an urban-facing role in a program called Entrepreneurs with Disabilities. And so that's the hat that I wear within the organization. So this is it's a federally funded program. It's an investment readiness program. That's how I describe it. So we help entrepreneurs get from idea to financing. So, so going into my past, I've been in entrepreneurial roles my whole career, really. I'd had a lot of different experiences, some of them very positive, and taken a few beatings for sure as well. But it's that access to capital is always, I don't want to say it's always the challenge, because if you have product market fit and if you have a viable prototype, then you don't have a problem, right? But the problem is that entrepreneurs, unfortunately are coached by these TV shows where they think it's an idea and maybe a pitch deck and then you get a check, right? And really it doesn't work like that. And in the past, there wasn't really any intermediary there. So the really cool thing about this role that I'm in, and a lot of the work that I'm doing now, is there is now like a pretty clearly defined roadmap to get you there, get you investment ready. So, thinking about this interview coming into it, there's a quote that I love. What you seek is seeking you. Right. So for every, starry-eyed startup founder out there, there's a junior investment banker that's, just gotten out of their MBA program and is pounding the pavement looking for deal flow.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is these two people speak different languages. right? So that's kind of where I come in, is sort of teaching the entrepreneur the language that the bankers speak. So when they sit down, there's a conversation that moves a deal forward, right? So that's what my work is today. And like I say, I've had a long entrepreneurial career and learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And so I guess all of that informs what I'm doing today.
That's great. Well, you gave so many nuggets of wisdom in that short answer. So I'll go over them one by one. As you rightly pointed out, entrepreneurship is a game where you make a lot of mistakes, and I think that is the whole journey. I mean, nobody knows exactly what the market will demand, and if you do have if you don't have a process, then forget about it. But even if you have a process, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of hit and trial. So it's great that you are providing that structure. And then you mentioned that you have some programs which are helping entrepreneurs with disability, which is another great initiative. I think we'll be talking about the kind of disabilities that you help with as well. And then just sort of promoting entrepreneurship, helping people, because it does get lonely. I mean, there is no unfortunately internship that you can join to become an entrepreneur. If you want to become a doctor, if you want to become an architect, if you want to become an accountant, there are certain things you could do to get that experience. But entrepreneurship is like, you just dive in, right?
Yeah, that's it. And well, really, so I mean, I try to, like, we try to put the community in community futures, right? So easier said than done. I mean, right now it's me, right? I work one-on-one with a lot of clients, and then we also kind of act as a hub for other coaches and experts that can provide training. We do some cohort-based learning, which is great, because that gives us kind of peer-to-peer sort of environment, which is really beneficial. And that's kind of like, if you come out of anything that we do, like, have some community at the end of it, right? Like, you might come out going like, this is not for me, there's no way I can do this, and that is a viable answer for some people. But yeah, so we try to provide create that space for people to get together and share ideas. And there's a lot of programs like what you guys are doing with Startup Vancouver is similar, just getting people in the same room, and you start to meet the same people. And one of the big things with doing a startup is it's your team, right? So this is another thing I say to anyone that'll listen to me, right? Like, you don't need an angel investor and a check for $100,000 to go and hire, outsourced developers to build your app. What you need is a technical co-founder who will build it with you, right? And that's, I think, the topic of this podcast, the bootstrapping part. Like, it's way easier to do if you have a team, right? If you're trying to do everything all yourself, all, after your full work day that you do just to cover your bills, like,
exactly.
Right?
And a lot of people make that mistake. And the thing is that we don't realize that we cannot be good at everything. We can only be good at a few things. I was coaching another entrepreneur, a startup founder, and I was advising him to hire a UX designer, because he is trying to put some graphics together. But he said, oh, no, I can do it myself. And he spent probably like 2 weeks struggling with it. And I said, is that 2-week time period, like, is it going to come back, or wouldn't it be better to just hire somebody? So, I mean, everybody has to go through their journey. So it's a process. But please tell us a little bit about the program, about the disabilities, and why that is so important.
Yeah, well, so, early on in this program, we sort of discovered, and it was like, when I found another organization that's involved is called Rise. Rise Helps. So they're a charity funded lender based in Toronto. So we work together in this program, and they're kind of our go-to first source of capital. So I found that organization first and reached out to them and said, hey, they were advertising that they're expanding across the country. They didn't have anyone in BC yet. So I said, hey, look, let me be your guy, right? This is me. And they said, well, we've just partnered with this organization, Community Futures. Here's a job description. Please apply.
Okay.
So, as an entrepreneur, every sort of few years of trying to do it all yourself, like for me anyway, you sort of hit the wall and go like, why am I doing this? And you apply for a job and then you realize that entrepreneurship isn't really a hireable skill set, right? But it turned out it was for this role. So coming into it, I was like, look, either you hire me or I'll be your first client, right? So obviously the latter, no, the former happened. They hired me, and I've had an interesting path. I sustained a couple of brain injuries, sports-related brain injuries. So I've had the experience of kind of going into this limited abilities. Let's say, I was not able to do what I did before for a long time, like measured in years. And I didn't really even see it until, much later when a lot of the recovery had happened. And I was like, oh, that's what that couple of years was. It was, result of a traumatic brain injury. But it also shed a lot of light into, and then coming into this program, and we've worked with hundreds of people, and a lot of us entrepreneurs have characteristics. We joke like entrepreneurship is almost a mental health diagnosis on its own, right? And if not, it kind of exacerbates a lot of the kind of low-lying conditions: anxiety, depression, ADD, OCD, that kind of thing, right? Like you mentioned your coaching client who's obsessing over UX design for weeks when really just hand it off, right? So we sort of identified early on that probably like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Warren Buffett probably all could have qualified for our program. All you do is self-identify as having an ongoing physical or mental health condition that acts as a barrier to your self-employment. So what does that look like? Okay, say anxiety, right? If you can't pick up the phone and make sales calls, that's a barrier because you have anxiety, right? If you have bouts of depression where you can't get out of bed for a couple of days, that's a barrier. But the good thing with entrepreneurship is, on those days you can be doing analytics, you can be doing your bookkeeping, and then on the days where you're up, that's when you make your sales calls, or so you can really structure your business around your highs and lows and your skills, right? So we launched into this and quickly discovered that there were really kind of two different sets of people coming into the program. One, there was a small cohort of people that had, what you would consider visible disabilities that were running going concerns. But the bulk of the intake were people that had a disability and we're just looking for a way to move along the income generation spectrum. So, okay, great. And then from that subset of the population, there were a couple of people with sort of those traditional like wheelchair or other kind of visible disabilities, but then all of the rest of them were mental health challenges, right? Whether like diagnosed, on support or not. So that's really been a kind of glimpse under the hood. And then that started in sort of 2018, 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020, right? So this, mental health, the real, one of the really sort of societal level health problems is that. So, but then interestingly, I got a lot of questions about, how has it been for your clients, right? And a lot of them, they've dealt with challenges all their life and had struggles all their life. So this was just another little kind of thing, right? So anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm answering the question you just asked, but so the program exists to provide additional supports for people that have additional challenges besides just the everyday ones of starting a business. So a lot of what we do is this strategic, in entrepreneurship, you have to sort of bounce up to that 50,000 foot view big vision, big strategy, and then be able to jump back down into like, what is the single most powerful next action that I can take to move my project forward? Because in a lot of cases, and I say this to everybody that will listen to, like the single best thing you can do for your startup is have a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't borrow your way to riches, right? Like, so so in a lot of cases, people are doing their sort of subsistence job by day, and then you have to block off kind of 25% of your brain just to be thinking about that single most important next action you can take in your business. And then you get home and you do it. And a lot of time, you're waiting for your UX designer to get you your designs back, and you're waiting for the web guy to implement some widget that you need, and you're waiting for a quote from your supplier. And so it's like, what can I do today? Well, today I can call this guy right. So there's always in that early days of bootstrapping, like that's, how you find success is being able to bounce up and down between that high level and next action. And that's a lot of what I help my clients with, because, throw in an anxiety disorder or another like ADD or another diagnosed condition, which is really just a little further along the spectrum of the condition than an undiagnosed person is. But if you struggle with focus, then it's hard to make those decisions. So we help with that. That's a lot of the help we do. And then in terms of real tangible outcomes, we do a lot of work with business planning. And everybody hates business plans, and I only need a business model canvas, or I only need a pitch deck. And it's like, that'll get you the meeting. But when it's time for financing and your lender or financier goes into due diligence, then you better have you better have validated financial projections. And that's the unsexy part, but it's, to me, I love it now, because and I love working through a cash flow projection with an entrepreneur, and they really see the lights come on, and it's like, oh wow, I actually have to sell 150 units a month, not 15, right? It's like, you do. So right, so we do a lot of that. Like, mostly what we're doing is debt financing. That first kind of, the first 50 grand is sort of what we call it, and in a lot of cases it's the first 4,000 or 5,000, right? For someone that's, again, our clients are coming from pretty challenging places in a lot of cases. So it's like, if you have a health challenge for a while, you're not generating income, bills aren't getting paid, your credit score gets affected. Then when you're kind of back on the horse and your credit's still in the ditch, like where do you go, right? So fortunately we are there, and we have some lenders that we work with that can sort of look at the big picture. So, but in those cases, that really rigorous assumption validation needs to be there, right? How many products can I sell? What is the marketing plan to sell that number, right? So again, a lot of people are terrified by this work, but I'm like, look, what you did here is the same amount of work as you'll need for a $400,000 commercial loan or equity investment, right? So it gets people used to that work. And again, just speaking in the language of the financiers, like, what is your customer acquisition cost? What is the lifetime value of that customer? Those are the two major ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we help with. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Sarah, producer of the Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. This episode has come to an end. Don't forget to check out the episode show notes for the links to the resources mentioned in this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Until the next episode, goodbye. Keep going and keep winning.
That's great. And as you pointed out, there are so many moving pieces in this game of entrepreneurship, and a lot of people just want to get to the finish line of counting the money. And as you said, like, business planning, cash flow projection, selling, all these things they require a unique skill, and especially if you are facing a challenge, mentally or physically. I think as we discussed earlier, pretty much everybody can be qualified to have a mental challenge these days, because the world around us is so how can I say, full of stimulus and confusing. So many things are coming at us, but very, very admirable work what you're doing. So let's talk about mental health right now. So because I think that has become a very, very big issue in the past 2 years, especially. And some of the statistics that I know, that, entrepreneurs they generally 48 to 58% of the entrepreneurs they have, even if they are like, they are perfectly sound, but after they start their entrepreneurial journey, they get into these psychotic episodes. So what has been your experience in terms of the rise in concern about mental health, like the general sort of sense of how people are feeling, and how has it affected their ability to execute in the startup industry or entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean that's a loaded topic, eh? Like but a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So like, yeah, if you're not having some mental health problems these days, you're not paying attention, right? or you're numbing out. So I mean, for me, like, again, I kind of bring an entrepreneurial spirit to my work, which is why you and I are doing this call at 20 after 4 on Friday. I got, you know what I mean? And I'm not like heading out the door to the Christmas party an hour ago, right? So yeah, like another thing that I say to any of my clients that will listen is and we even bring it up on the intake, like, what are you doing to manage your mental health right now? And a lot of people have counseling and their family and stuff, and it's like, okay, great, but that is not going to be sufficient, right? What you're doing today to maintain a baseline in your given circumstances will not be sufficient to maintain that baseline when you have suppliers, employees, accounts receivable, invoices due, ad spend out there. Like, your ads aren't converting how you think they're going to. Like, it's not going to be enough. So I have to tell myself this all the time too. So like, really prioritizing a self-care program is so important. I mean, for me, it's yoga and meditation in the mornings. I try to get outside at least an hour a day. Right now that looks like taking the kids to the playground, so it's not quite as intensive as my previous life. But so like, those are the big ones for me. Diet's really important for me too, because I don't get as much exercise as I'd like to, so I have to make sure I'm eating clean and healthy. So those are kind of proactive things. The other thing that's really important for me is shutting off the news, right? Media in general. And just from a mental health perspective, but from a time perspective, right? Someone say, oh, I don't have time, right? Well, shut off Facebook, shut off Netflix, and quit drinking, and you'll have way more time than you thought you did, right? Like, so those are just their mental drains and sort of inversely inspirational. So I do try and sort of populate my feeds, and like, these are alternative, like, I'm not on any of the real mainstream media channels except for LinkedIn, I guess, where we connected. But so really tuning out that noise and being really specific about what kind of messages you're allowing into your brain, right? So those are kind of the three big things for me. I mean, again, community is a big one too, and that's been so challenging for the last going on 2 years, right? So I really try to do that. Like, if anyone will have a coffee with me, I'm there in person. The Zoom meetings are they're better than nothing, right? And you allow people from all around the world to get together, and it's kind of the new normal. So, those are really good. Getting out of your space, that's another thing for me too, right? Like, I go, unfortunately, there's days where I don't step out foot of my house, which is not good. I really try to. So just getting out of your space and getting out into the world and moving and breathing fresh air and stuff, those are really important things for me. But then you really have to find what works for you.
Yeah absolutely. I think once again, a lot of what you're saying is some people realize how important it is, but I think it's even more important as an entrepreneur to really take care of yourself, because you are fighting so many battles all day long, right? And I think a lot of people, they actually do the opposite. They actually say, oh, you know what, I don't care, let me hustle, let me just go all the way, no sleep, no exercise, no nothing. But I think that is also causing a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that's a viable sort of mission from about like 25 to 30, but like by 30, and then by 40, by 45, you know what I mean? Like it's a marathon, right? Like entrepreneurship is like a marathon every day. So yeah, and it's funny, I'll come out of my room, the office here, and my partner will be like, "Oh, did you get everything done?" And it's like, no, like, of course, you will never ever get everything done. And I learned that years and years ago. Like, you will never get it all done. You will never be done. There'll always be something nagging at you. So sometimes you just got to be like, "I'm taking the dog for a walk. See you later." Right. And yeah, the last startup that I launched was really around. It was kind of a thinly veiled concussion recovery program, but it went so far as to, time the weather, right? Like if it's going to be sunny on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, I'm not scheduling a meeting. I'm going outside. Right? So, I mean, good luck to be that organized. And I know some people are, but so it's really, really, you have to prioritize it as an entrepreneur, because there's just so much coming at you that, you really need to balance it out, and that full throttle, full-time thing. I mean, that's who we are. So that's why you really have to be purposive about it, right? Like,
absolutely. That's great advice. And I love the way that you said that, you actually timed your meetings according to the weather and everything. So that's very smart. And one more thing you said was, I think you repeated it a few times, like, I tell the entrepreneurs or my clients, those of them who will listen. So that is another thing that I find that, entrepreneurs are generally very, very headstrong. And tell us a little bit about that. Like, how many people do you think actually listen?
Well, this is funny. Yeah. So I have, I've probably worked with 200 businesses in the last 2 years, financed probably 20 of them, right? So that gives you an idea of the percentage that listen. Right. So, and it's weird, like, we can get into psychology and stuff all day long, but I mean, a lot of, like, you do have to be headstrong. You do have to do that. You have to have a certain level of cognitive dissonance. Like, my startup's going to succeed where 97% of them fail, right? But I'm going to succeed. So you do need to have, and like I say, if that is a little bit crazy. So you are right out of the gate qualified for our program. So come and see me if you want some help with that. But and that's really how I validate, the level of investment I'm going to make. Both, we have funds that we invest in our clients, and then my own time with the client. And again, I don't want to make anyone wrong or bad here, but like a lot of people, I find escape into their business idea as a safe mental escape zone, right? And again, especially people coming from a trauma background and right. So they have this elaborate plan in their heads, but that's what it is. It's just an escape plan, right? And so that's just something that's kind of dawned on me recently, like that. And then a lot of people are, and again, trauma is a spectrum too. Like, if you grew up on planet Earth, like, you've got some trauma, right? So people are, they have their back against the wall. They're defensive. That's all fear-based. And that's, so I can see through that. I know that that's fear. And there is, there's ways through that. Right. So again, I should say, like, I try not, if I have an hour with someone, I'm not telling them what to do for the, you know what I mean? I'm asking them, I try to ask the questions to get the entrepreneur to come to the conclusion on their own. And like I say, if there's a place, if one of the questions is like, should I be working right now, or should I be putting all of my time into the business? I'm like, you should definitely be working, because it's going to take way more time and way more money than you think it's going to get this thing going. And you can't just borrow all the money to get yourself there, right? So those a couple of round answers to pointed questions, but
No, that's very funny. It's similar to my experience as well. And yeah, I mean, as you said, like it's a chicken and egg situation where you got to be headstrong, but you got to be flexible as well. Now, talking about flexibility and listening, you also provide mentorship. I mean, Community Feature provide mentorship. You are an experienced entrepreneur yourself. What is the role of mentors in one's success?
Well, yeah, great question. And I'll let you know when well, let's have another talk in a couple of years here. But it's funny because, yeah, like you mentioned earlier in the call, like where is that community, right? And so, for me, the mentors I've had are the books that I've read, and the rest of it's kind of been learning by mistakes, right? Like, don't do that, right? I saw what happened. So then the flip side of that, like, so with Rise, our lender, one of the requirements or inclusions with the loan is a formal mentoring relationship. And so, for anyone that's listening that wants to get involved in mentoring, there is opportunities for that as well. But yeah, there's a statistic that they quote on the website, and it's I won't recall it correctly, but it's a significant, like it's something like 57% better outcomes. So of those, 97% of businesses that fail, of the 5% that succeed, the percentage of those that have a mentor, I'm murdering this statistic, but it's a visible difference, right? Because again, for me, when I hand off this file, like we get the deal done, we get them some money, like in cases like people get this check in their hand and then they just go and spend it on 5 shiny objects instead of like what we planned to do, right? So having that continuum of care, so to speak, and it's just, again, especially for someone that has these sort of elevated levels of mental health challenges, it's just someone to bounce your ideas off of and listen to their feedback, right? And then there are technical skills, like how do I configure QuickBooks, or how do I, what do I have to do myself? What should I hire out for? Like, how do I configure Ad Manager? Like, so there are different technical skill sets that a mentor can bring. We usually go for that sort of higher level strategic guidance, and then offer the kind of hands on the tools training through the programming that we have. But that said, it is a challenge, right? Like, there's a small it's a challenge to find someone that really has sort of the business acumen and the time, right? So there's, so it is tricky, but so we're always sort of looking for mentors as well. And again, you get what you put into it, right? So for the people that really lean on their mentors, they get a lot out of it. And the ones that just sort of do it to check the box.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, great. I could not agree more. Mentors have made such a big difference in my life, and I mentor many people, and I think they get quite a bit of value. Basically, it's as you said, like, we make a lot of mistakes, but if a mentor has already made that mistake, why repeat that, right? Like, we can just leverage on that. So that's great. Well, thank you so much for being with us. As you said, like, Friday evening, I know it's not the typical time that we schedule these interviews, but I'm so thankful for your time and for your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Manuj. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And anytime I get to chat with you is a pleasure for me too. So, there's one thing I wanted to leave you with, if I could. I was reading through your intake questions, and we didn't get to it, but one of them was about, what your biggest accomplishment is. And, you've had some pretty, heavy hitters on the show here. And so, what I've done maybe doesn't stack up against that, but what I wanted to leave anyone that's listening, for me, the biggest shift, and it was a process, and it took a long time, and coming through injuries and health crisis and stuff. But for me, it was just becoming who I really am. So I had a lot of financial success earlier in my career, doing what it was that I thought I should do, what I was supposed to do. And unfortunately, that came with a lot of mental health challenges, right? So that not quite aligned with my purpose. And so today, my purpose is serving others, however that looks like. I let the Creator sort of, point me in the direction. And so, today, whatever financial success I have, and I'm doing fine. All of what I do now is coming from a place of sort of a authentic meaning, for lack of a less buzzier word. So I guess that would be the message that I'd want to leave with anyone that's listening, is first find out, who you are and who your gift, what your gift to humanity is. And then let your creation flow out of that, rather than trying to fit your a round peg into a square hole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I will say a few words here in response, is that I by no means this is an easy feat. So when you say I've had heavy hitters, like, I think realizing your own self, knowing yourself, is one of the biggest challenges. So, and you have done that, and are helping other people, and you're helping other people to get to that point. So that is a huge achievement. I mean, I have been there, where I have been lost in my own sort of mind and going in circles.
Yeah.
But I know once you really find yourself, that is where the journey starts. Before that, it's like, just being all over the place. So I do not take it lightly, and I really congratulate you on getting to the other side.
Yeah, thanks. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's a process of making mistakes and stuff too. But if you focus on the right thing, then all of the rest of the stuff sort of falls together, right? So that's well, this is great. I'm glad we got to share that.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us, if people want to reach out, what is the best way they can do that?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Dugan Selkirk. I'm the only Dugan Selkirk on LinkedIn. And then through Community Futures, if you can Google Community Futures or the Entrepreneurs with Disabilities program. So we have a bunch of different programs there. So there are a few other people like me in our organization that serve sort of different niches of our community. Those, reach out that way. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or come through Community Futures if you are actually in that sort of startup phase and want some help. We're easy to find.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Manuj.
You are listening to Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show with Manuj Aggarwal. Businesses face numerous challenges, like finding the right product market fit, determining the market size, implementing a winning go-to-market strategy, crafting customer-centric USP, competitive analysis, looking for funding, building up cash flow and profitability. We have made a lot of free resources available to the entrepreneurial community, including this podcast. We invite you to check out our websites and follow us on social channels. The links are in the show notes. We hope you find the resources useful and utilize them to grow your business. We also have some programs for entrepreneurs. If you find our content useful, then you will definitely find the programs outstanding. So do check them out.